Has scripted history and is all set to take over as the UK Prime Minister. He will be the first ever Indian origin member to take over the reins of United Kingdom. This after his contender Penny Mordaunt withdrew from the race after failing to muster enough numbers to contest for the Conservative Party leader's post. So Sunak will be meeting King Charles in a short while from now. In fact, Sunak had received a wave of support from the Tory MPs, with over 160 of them openly declaring their support. Now, Sunak will become the first leader of colour and the first Hindu to take up the top job in UK. At 42, he is also the youngest Prime Minister in more than 200 years. In his first address, he spoke about what his vision is for United Kingdom.
I am humbled and honoured to have the support of my parliamentary colleagues and to be elected leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together.
And well, the task is cut out for the new Prime Minister as UK battles economic challenges. Rising energy prices have hit the households hard, with energy bills also expected to rise significantly. In fact, the cost of living has also risen, with retail inflation in double digits. And then, of course, Sunak will also have to take steps to revive the economic growth, which is stalled at the moment. Now, on the political front as well, the challenges are plenty, because he has to ensure the stability of the government with two leadership changes in just the last 2 months. Danish Khan is joining us live from London, the Times Now contributor. Well, Danish, in just a short while from now, Rishi Sunak will be meeting King Charles. It's going to be a momentous occasion.
Absolutely historic day. That meeting with King Charles is still on, and I guess that he might leave Buckingham Palace any moment and will be coming here to 10 Downing Street, which is the official residence of the UK Prime Minister, and then he will be addressing the media. The statement that we just played was what he made yesterday. It was a very brief statement, as we could see. And what I gathered is that that was because Rishi Sunak was not officially the Prime Minister yesterday, and that's why he kept his statement very brief and to the point. He started with mentioning Liz Truss, thanking her for her contribution, and then he, of course, spelled out what will be the priorities. But today, as he reaches 10 Downing Street after that meeting with King Charles III at Buckingham Palace, that is when he is expected to make a more substantial speech about what he has in store for the people, for the businesses, and also, of course, for the different issues that plagues United Kingdom, which we just spoke about earlier: the rising cost of living, energy prices, and also, of course, inflation. People here are facing huge rise in their mortgages. All of these are of immense interest to the people here, and they're keenly watching what Rishi Sunak has to say. During the leadership battle, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss had spar actually on the issue of economy. They had what I could say a bit competing visions of what to do with the British economy. But now that Rishi Sunak has got a massive support from the Tory MPs, he has his stage open. It's expected that he will not receive the amount of opposition or roadblocks that Liz Truss faced, because the Tory MPs have come out in huge support for him, massive support. As we have been reporting, Penny Mordaunt did not even get the mandatory 100 MPs supporting her. So it's open field for Rishi Sunak. All eyes are set on what he will say any moment from now on outside 10 Downing Street, and then what actions he will take over the next few days. Also, there is a lot of speculation and interest as to who will be in his cabinet team, because with a new Prime Minister, it's only normal and expected that he will have his own people in the cabinet. He has worked, he's more comfortable, but we gather that it will be a unity cabinet. That is what the sources in 10 Downing Street are saying. That's because Rishi Sunak does not want the same division to continue that was the hallmark of Liz Truss's administration. So many ministers had to resign. Suella Braverman as the Home Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, they both left, and then Liz Truss followed well. That's not what the Tory party wants. So Rishi Sunak has his task cut out. He will be, of course, appointing his cabinet members. Very soon we will hear that. And then, of course, a historic, momentous occasion. We should also not forget that actually it is a phenomenal rise of Rishi Sunak as a politician, who actually first became MP only in 2015. Now that's a meteoric rise from being MP in 2015 to now taking charge as Prime Minister in 2022.
Absolutely. So on Deepavali, we have an Indian origin Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, and today he will be meeting the King. Danish, stay on with us. We'll continue coming back to you for all the updates from London. Let me also introduce former diplomat, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Vishnu Prakash, how do you look at this development, a very significant one? Yes, it's a very tough time when Rishi Sunak is taking over the reins of United Kingdom, but significant and also very, very historic.
Well, good evening, and indeed, this is a very important occasion. It is history in the making. As the New York Times says, he is the first person of color to become the Prime Minister, or will become the Prime Minister shortly. A practicing Hindu, a person with tremendous qualifications from Oxford, Stanford, Goldman Sachs, very young. And to assume the mantle of the Prime Minister of Britain is no small achievement. But let us also remember that these are not normal times. There is an economic crisis of a huge proportion. And this is a time for a person who understands finances to be at the helm of affairs. Mr. Rishi Sunak is more of a technocrat than a politician. So this is the job that is cut out for him. The big question would be, once he has stabilized the British economy, how long would his tenure continue, whether the support for him from across sections of the Conservative Party will continue or not. That is, time will tell. But yes, today is an important day. It's an important development. I think it's a milestone in the history of Great Britain.
Okay, you know, there is a lot of talk about his Hindu identity as well, and I want to talk about that because in the run-up to his elevation as the UK Prime Minister as well, this was one of the controversies that he quoted. It seemed like even within the Conservative Party, he could not gather all support because of, as some said, an inherent bias that he faced. Would you say that, you know, it was exaggerated to a great extent, or now that he has become the minority Prime Minister, all of that can be forgotten? Or, you know, how do you view the kind of controversy that he quoted with the fact that he was openly Hindu?
Well, Britain is essentially a white country. The people of color are in a minority. So it is given that there will be a preference for a person who is from the mainstream. And certainly the fact that he is of different heritage, different ethnicity, will be a bit of a damper for him. There is no doubt about it. But therefore, I did mention that these are not normal circumstances. Now, whether in the normal circumstances, Britain is ready for a person who is not white, a person of color, is anybody's guess. One cannot get into that at the moment. But these are not normal circumstances. They tried out Liz Truss. She in 45 days managed to inflict more damage on the economy. Mr. Rishi Sunak is a tried and tested person. He has been at the helm of affairs as the Chancellor of Exchequer since 2020. And his handling of the COVID crisis has come in for great appreciation. He had used Treasury funds judiciously to save jobs, support struggling Britons, and he has a plan now. If somebody can straight away hit the ground running in terms of managing the economic crisis, it is Rishi Sunak. So I guess he's a man of the hour, and let us wish him all the very best.
All right. In fact, we're getting exclusive visuals of Rishi Sunak also meeting King Charles. Sunak has been appointed as Britain's Prime Minister by King Charles III. That is the message coming in from the palace. A very, very momentous occasion, of course. Yes, and these are the exclusive pictures that we are playing out for you. Mr. Vishnu Prakash, this is the moment the entire country, of course, being proud for Britain as well. They're at the brink of a big change. We've been speaking about the kind of hopes that are pinned on Rishi Sunak as well. How do you think Rishi Sunak is going to address them? How challenging do you think it's going to be? Because for Liz Truss, shortest ever stint as the Prime Minister, she took over at a very tough time, and it's the same for Rishi Sunak as well.
Well, he has started off, if I can say he started off quite well. He has hit the right buttons. He has already spoke of unity. He has spoken of, he has asked everybody to support him, and his opponents or his previous opponents within the party have expressed support, which is a good sign. He has rightly pointed out that the Conservative Party is trailing badly in the polls, that there is an existential threat, and that the Labour Party, and he has also ruled out early elections. So far, so good. Now it would depend on his cabinet as to who will be his Chancellor of Exchequer, because that is today the key position, and he will also have to have enough confidence in his Chancellor, also be able to give his Chancellor enough leeway, because he himself has been a Chancellor, and he will not want to be seen as micromanaging, although the buck stops at the table of the Prime Minister. So his cabinet is important. How he carries himself in the next few weeks, months is important. In Britain they always say that used to say that such and such Prime Minister was a wartime Prime Minister. Such and such a Prime Minister is a peacetime Prime Minister. Now it seems that Mr. Rishi Sunak is an economic crisis manager. Now, that hopefully he'll be able to do well, but whether he'll be able to navigate the very complicated British politics once things settle down is the million-dollar question. But let us see how things happen. All said and done, today is a historic day, and one needs to recognize that and rejoice in that.
Let's also get voices from Britain. Do stay on with us. Let me introduce Adam Shaw's political commentator joining us, and also Lord Rami Ranger, CBE member of House of Lords and patron of the Conservative Friends of India from London. First, I want to ask you, Lord Rami Ranger, how different do you think Rishi Sunak's stint is going to be? Because there was a lot of instability at the time Liz Truss took over. Now, it's going to be an even tougher challenge for Rishi Sunak as he takes over the reins.
I think, first of all, we need to pay tribute to the British sense of tolerance and fair play, where today we have seen a non-white has become the first Prime Minister under the king, because Liz Truss was under the Queen. This is the first appointment by His Royal Highness the King Charles III. So this is a great tribute to this great nation for their tolerance and also their generosity. Now, coming back to Rishi has vindicated himself, because in the last leadership election, whatever he said has come true. People didn't take notice of him. He is a professional banker, so he knows a lot about the economy, and he has been a chancellor at the most challenging time when we were facing COVID pandemic. So he came up with a furlough scheme where he helped lots of small businesses and families to survive and to avoid bankruptcies. So that is number one achievement during the COVID period. The second one, he was able to find lots of money for the COVID vaccination. Without the vaccination, we would be as free as we are today. So he knows everything about the economy, that first thing first, you have to bring inflation under control, then you can talk about the tax cuts. And then he also knows that he has to unite the party, he has to attract talent to his cabinet, unlike Liz Truss, who appointed her friend, and then she had to deal with the dissent within her own party because talented people who were left out, turned on her. Thirdly, Rishi also knows that he has to, if he has to win the next election, general election, the economy has to be turned around. Ordinary people have to feel good that under his watch they are much better off. Luckily, unemployment is the lowest at the moment in the UK in 40 years. So all we need to do is to control inflation and make sure this effect of Ukraine war, which has escalated the fuel prices and food prices, do not escalate. So therefore, Rishi has a great challenges ahead of him, and I'm very confident he will prove to be the most effective Prime Minister in this decade.
Okay, all right. In fact, we're also getting visuals of his cavalcade, but I also want to just go back to what you said. You listed his achievements, but, you know, as you began, you also spoke about generosity of the United Kingdom as he has been appointed as the UK Prime Minister. Would you say, you know, that's a bit unfair to him because he is here because of his merit?
100%. Without his merit and caliber, he wouldn't be where he is, because he impressed people with his vision, with intelligence, and with judgment. And that is where he has been brought back within just 3 months, because they realized that what he said was 100% correct. And the the Liz Truss, who was making promises, she could never deliver. She admitted, I made those false promises, I could not deliver, so therefore I'm resigning. So that vindicated Rishi, and now Rishi, the only hope, if they don't unite behind Rishi, then the party will suffer huge defeat, and many of the member of parliament will lose their seats. So therefore it's a do and die situation, and Rishi has been brought at the right time with the right credential, and because he's a highly educated. So I think it's a very good day for, and plus, the most important thing is Britain will come out of sluggish growth by when we have the free trade agreement with India. India is 1.4 billion people, very huge market, growing at the rate of 6 to 7%, and that will be a very big boost for the British economy. And the Indian company are already investing record amount of money in this country, and they will come much more aggressively to come to United Kingdom, and there will be a mother of all free trade agreement between number 5 and 6 economy of the world. And Indian economy is not small, it's a huge economy.
Right, so looking for improvement in relations with India as well. But, you know, I want to go back to an article that The Guardian had written where it said, one who wields a knife does not wear the crown, as it wrote about Rishi Sunak and a spate of resignations that came in, something that he led in Boris Johnson's time. But like you mentioned, a minority Prime Minister, Mr. Adam Schwartz, do you think one of the biggest challenges for Rishi Sunak, and perhaps throughout his career, has been the fact that the focus in a big way has also been on his ethnicity, and that was one of the challenges because of which within the Conservative Party as well he could not get adequate support initially?
You know, your audio is very
I think, there won't be a single British Asian person in the country who won't really have dealt with some kind of discrimination or social prejudice because of their backgrounds. I think it's certainly something that Sunak would have dealt with not only in the Conservative Party but actually throughout his entire life as well. But I think it's worth noting that within the UK there is quite a distinct political class. And I think, trying to navigate through that is a really difficult thing. And I think the fact that obviously Sunak is the first British Asian person, the first person of colour to come into Downing Street is, truly an extraordinary achievement. I mean, I think aspects of Sunak's background as well, the fact that he has been in sort of financial services and banking, mean that he's, perhaps more well disposed to being the first Conservative Prime Minister, as well as the fact that he's sort of privately educated, very well educated individual. Certainly those aspects will have supported him to sort of navigate through this very extraordinary achievement that he's done.
Okay, all right. Let me very quickly bring in Danish Khan, who's joining us. Danish, Rishi Sunak just about to speak, a very, very crucial moment. In fact, before we come to you, let's cut across.
I have just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name. It is only right to explain why I am standing here as your new Prime Minister. Right now, our country is facing a profound economic crisis. The aftermath of COVID still lingers. Putin's war in Ukraine has destabilized energy markets and supply chains the world over. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Liz Truss. She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her restlessness to create change. But some mistakes were made. Not born of ill will or bad intentions. Quite the opposite, in fact. But mistakes nonetheless. And I have been elected as leader of my party and your Prime Minister, in part, to fix them. And that work begins immediately. I will place economic stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. This will mean difficult decisions to come. But you saw me during COVID doing everything I could to protect people and businesses with schemes like furlough. There are always limits, more so now than ever. But I promise you this: I will bring that same compassion to the challenges we face today. The government I lead will not leave the next generation, your children and grandchildren, with a debt to settle that we were too weak to pay ourselves. I will unite our country, not with words, but with action. I will work day in and day out to deliver for you. This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours. I will always be grateful to Boris Johnson for his incredible achievements as Prime Minister, and I treasure his warmth and generosity of spirit. And I know he would agree that the mandate my party earned in 2019 is not the sole property of any one individual. It is a mandate that belongs to and unites all of us. And the heart of that mandate is our manifesto. I will deliver on its promise: a stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders, protecting our environment, supporting our armed forces, levelling up, and building an economy that embraces the opportunities of Brexit, where businesses invest, innovate, and create jobs. I understand how difficult this moment is. After the billions of pounds it cost us to combat COVID, after all the dislocation that caused, in the midst of a terrible war that must be seen successfully to its conclusions, I fully appreciate how hard things are. And I understand too that I have work to do to restore trust after all that has happened. All I can say is that I am not daunted. I know the high office I have accepted, and I hope
to live up to its demands. But when the opportunity to serve comes along, you cannot question the moment, only your willingness. So I stand here before you, ready to lead our country into the future, to put your needs above politics, to reach out and build a government that represents the very best traditions of my party. Together, we can achieve incredible things. We will create a future worthy of the sacrifices so many have made, and fill tomorrow and every day thereafter with hope. Thank you.
So a historic moment there in the United Kingdom when Rishi Sunak, a person of Indian origin, has taken over as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and delivered his first speech as Prime Minister right outside 10 Downing Street. Let me go across to Danish Khan for all the updates coming in from the United Kingdom. Danish, a very significant moment, but there was absolutely no invocation there in that short speech about his identity. The priority clearly for the new Prime Minister of the UK is to fix the nation's economy.
That's right, absolutely. It was a very measured, very thoughtful speech that Rishi Sunak just made. He mentioned Liz Truss, he mentioned Boris Johnson. He also mentioned that as the politician, he had no option but to take this role that he has taken on to. Never mind the circumstances, never mind what the situation is. As a politician, his duty towards the country comes first. As an MP, he is answerable to his constituencies and to the country at large. He, of course, spoke about the economic challenges that he faces, and he did mention that there were some mistakes that were done. In a very calm, dignified, and in a very measured way, he did say that the previous government did falter at some places, not out of ill will, but it was a genuine mistake, basically reflecting the different approach that politicians can have as to how to run a country. And he spelled that out very calmly. He did not brush it under the carpet. He did not say that everything is fine and that he was, and the nation is very happy with Liz Truss's prime ministership. He did not say that. He, of course, praised Boris Johnson and Truss, but then also gave a glimpse that there could be some hard decisions. But Rishi Sunak's popularity soared after he announced the furlough scheme here in Great Britain. Many people benefited from that scheme. When the pandemic struck the whole world and Great Britain, Rishi Sunak announced that people who are self-employed, they will be paid by the government, by the Treasury, based on their tax returns in the past years. And that scheme was a huge help to thousands of families here who were struggling because of the pandemic. All they had to do was to fill a form, mail it to the HMRC, and they will get the money in their bank account based on the income, based on the tax that they had showed that they had paid, the tax that they had paid in the previous year. That scheme was very popular. It showed the human face of the government. Although, of course, there are critics who say that the Tory government can do more. But today, Rishi Sunak spoke like a true blue Tory. The mention, for example, to the family, it's a very crucial component of Tory policy. They keep the emphasis on children and the families. As Rishi Sunak said that he does not want the future generation to look back at this generation of the politicians or at the Tory party as people who failed their children, who failed the coming generation. They don't want to leave a debt for the children and for the nation, and that there will be some steps, some very difficult steps, some very difficult decisions that will be done, that will people can expect. So significant moment, of course, and as I've been saying, it's also a phenomenal rise. Look at the composure, look at his body language, look at the confidence with which he addressed the media. A person who was elected MP just in 2015, became a junior minister in the Treasury, and then was appointed the Chancellor of the Exchequer in 2022. It's also interesting the circumstances in which he was appointed the Chancellor. He actually replaced Sajid Javid, who once upon a time was a contender to be the Prime Minister. Boris Johnson sacked Sajid Javid because he was not someone who was listening very eagerly or openly to Boris Johnson. At least that's the narrative that was spun. And Rishi Sunak was brought in as somebody who will be easier to work with for Boris Johnson, as someone who will appreciate the fact that Boris Johnson gave him the opportunity. 2 years down the line, well, here we are. Boris Johnson is nowhere in the power structure. Rishi Sunak, who was appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer by Boris Johnson, perhaps with the understanding that there won't be much challenge from number 11 to number 10, and now he has become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He did not fail to mention Boris Johnson, of course, in that speech, because it is a known fact that Boris Johnson placed his faith in Rishi Sunak, gave him that promotion, and now Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister. A historic occasion, a momentous day in UK politics and in the relationship between India and the United Kingdom.
Right, thanks for that, Danish. In fact, let me take this across to our guests as well. Adam Schwartz, political commentator, as well as a former diplomat, Mr. Vishnu Prakash. But let me come to Adam Schwartz first and foremost. He did not mince any words, did Rishi Sunak. He called the state of the economy a crisis at this point in time in the United Kingdom. So while this might be a very significant and a historic moment, Adam Schwartz, that a non-white has become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, how much of this position as Prime Minister, as far as Rishi Sunak is concerned, a metaphorical crown of thorns, given the challenges that he now has to face?
Yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, he dealt with, first and foremost, the issue of the economy. I mean, I think really there were three main things that really struck me from that speech. Firstly, he started out by saying that he really had to sort of justify why he was there. And of course, what we've seen over the last sort of 6 weeks in the means that it really has to justify why the fact that the UK now has its third Prime Minister in such a short amount of time. He acknowledged what he described as mistakes. He said they were well-intentioned mistakes, but nonetheless mistakes. And therefore, part of what his job was to do was actually to rectify those mistakes. And of course, you know, many of the economic challenges that we're facing now, if not all of them, were the same things that he would have had to deal with if he had won the leadership election just a few months ago. But of course, you know, as we've seen, Liz Truss's premiership has had such a sort of disastrous result that many of those economic problems, particularly with the fall in the price of sterling and also the consequent rise in interest rates in the UK, have meant that Sunak is going to have a much more challenging time, and all of those problems have been made much worse by the fact that Truss had this very difficult premiership. The second thing that really struck me about Sunak's address was the fact that he really echoed the narrative that he mentioned during his leadership campaign during the summer. He talked about the fact that he had no intention of allowing the current debts of the country to be paid by future generations. So I think it's really interesting in the sense that Sunak really is still sort of launching his premiership and his time in Downing Street very much on the basis of the principles that he will consider to have been vindicated, you know, that he echoed during the campaign. And finally, you know, Sunak talked a lot about aspects and principles that will define his premiership, notably professionalism, integrity, competence and trust. And I think, you know, all of those issues are things that really have been major problems in UK politics, certainly over the last year or so, and that have massively become even bigger problems during the very short Liz Truss premiership. So the fact that he's clearly trying to distinguish himself from what came before him, I think is really important. But as you say, you know, ultimately his premiership will be defined by the success or the failure of the British economy.
Right. Will he be able to tide over these challenges is something that we'll have to wait and see. I request our guests to stay with us, because let's just once again listen in to what Rishi Sunak had to say after taking over as the Prime Minister and delivering his first speech as PM right outside Downing Street.
I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name. It is only right to explain why I'm standing here. As you...
Well, let me take this across to Mr. Vishnu Prakash as well. If we were to see these developments simply through an Indian prism right now, what are some of the tangibles that India would be hoping to achieve, apart from having congratulated Rishi Sunak for having become the Prime Minister, the first person of Asian origin to become the PM of the United Kingdom? Kingdom. In fact, we've lost our line there with Mr. Vishnu Prakash. Let me go back once again to Adam Schwartz, a political commentator who joins us on the broadcast for these inputs. It was very interesting, Adam Schwartz, that Mr. Sunak did not, in fact, invoke his identity as an Asian living in the United Kingdom at all. That appeared to be a completely secondary consideration, even though his original campaign at the time that he was actually contesting along with Liz Truss as well as others to become the Prime Minister after Boris Johnson's resignation did in fact go back to the fact that he was Indian by origin and talked about the assimilative culture in the United Kingdom. That was completely absent in his inaugural speech. Clearly the focus in his speech was simply to fix the economy and the crisis that the country is facing right now.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. I mean, he did mention, as you mentioned, during the summer leadership election, that of course he would be, the first British person of Asian background to become Prime Minister. But I think there is also something to be said about not mentioning it, in the sense that it is obviously hugely significant, and the significance really speaks for itself. But actually, by not mentioning it, it does sort of show a humility and a sense that actually in modern Britain, where you value diversity, and of course the huge contributions that the British Asian community has made to the country, in the sense that actually, really that in a sort of diverse country, that shouldn't be something that's really notable. Of course it is a huge moment where you have the first British Asian Prime Minister, but I think it really speaks to Rishi Sunak as sort of his humble nature, in a sense, that he doesn't want to mention it. And really, so much will be written and talked about that aspect of himself, over the days and weeks to come. So I think to some extent, he of course recognizes that as a key feature to himself and one part of his identity and journey, but it's, as I say, not something that he would mention. But it's certainly something that British Asians around the UK and of course in the global community it's something they would notice themselves, because actually for the first time they can see at the very top of the country someone who really looks like them. And I think that's so important for people's morale and for people's understanding of their place in society, right, to actually know that their background and their ethnicity doesn't really hold them back.
And Mr. Schwartz, how secure is Sunak's position within the Conservative Party? Because as we know, he enjoys support among a large number of members of Parliament who belong to the Conservative Party. But as far as his ascension to the Prime Ministership is concerned, a very quick response, how secure is his position? Are there rivals who would be eyeing that position from within the party as well?
Well, there certainly are rivals, but I think given the fact that firstly, won about 200 MP nominations.
That's correct.
A majority of his MPs shows that actually he does have quite a lot of authority in the party. And secondly, there's the fact that this is the second time mid-election cycle that they've changed.
Absolutely. Mr. Schwartz, I'm sorry I have to interrupt you there. We have to slip into a short break. Of course, we'll continue our coverage of Rishi Sunak's appointment as the British Prime Minister shortly after this. Stay tuned.